What is a spec home? Well, a spec home is a speculative home, meaning that a builder is building a house that's on trend with today's designs, typically something that a buyer would actually want to buy, and they kind of wait for a buyer to come along and snatch it up. So the question is, should you go and buy one? I work with several companies across Oklahoma who are building spec homes. These spec homes are usually between 1,000 square feet all the way up to maybe even 5,000 square feet, but mostly they're in between those two. I'm Marcie Billen and I'm a real estate agent in Oklahoma, specifically the Oklahoma City Metro. So I've worked with home builders for several years in our market here, and there are a few different reasons why people would specifically want to buy a spec house. And let me just explain a little bit more about the spec house. The spec house is something that you didn't really choose. It's almost the same as going to buy a resale house, meaning a house that someone else has lived in before, because you didn't choose any of that either. Like, that previous owner chose all of the things in the house, the design of the house, the different colors, the finishes, everything. For a spec house, it's pretty similar. It's just different in that no one else has lived in the house. The builder just built something that they thought a buyer would enjoy. So in Oklahoma right now, a lot of people are choosing to go with a spec house or to buy a spec house because there's no competition in our market for spec houses. And I'm not saying that, it's not a competitive market. It is. What I'm saying is it is first come, first serve with most of our builders that are building spec houses here in Oklahoma, meaning that you don't have a bidding war for these spec houses. So I'm not really sure when it became taboo for builders to run up the prices on their homes, because you kind of think they'd want to, but most of them just really, they don't do it. It's literally first come, first serve for the people that are putting in contracts on these spec houses. So if you're not wanting to compete and you want a new home, a spec house just might be for you. I've also heard a rumor from buyers at different times in my career that spec houses don't have high-end finishes. Well, let me just tell you that is definitely not true. There are different levels of home builds, that's for sure. So what we've seen since the end of the 2008 recession is that home builders are really kind of putting in these mid-range, high-end finishes into their spec houses in order to sell it to the consumer. So your spec house isn't gonna have like cheapest possible thing in it, meaning like cheap carpet or cheap light fixtures or cheap paint even. It's usually on par with the rest of the semi-customs or customs that the builder builds. And honestly, we even have some builders here in Oklahoma who will not build a custom. They only do spec houses, so keep that in mind. Often when looking at spec houses, you're gonna get to go in several different homes that the builder has built in order to see their work and to see what might fit you best in terms of a floor plan. Sometimes you might have to wait a little bit for your perfect floor plan, but sometimes it might be available in a couple of months or right away. It totally depends on the situation. Something you should know if you do intend to buy a spec house and maybe it's not completed yet, which happens a lot in our market, is that if the builder has already ordered everything to complete the house, including paint, including, flooring, fixtures, whatever, the garage door, all of these different things, if they have already ordered all of that, they're most likely not gonna let you change anything about the house, even though it's not finished. And the reasons for that have to do with supply chain issues. So just keep that in mind. But I know that some builders, specifically ones that are a little bit smaller, they're not producing hundreds of houses a year, they will let you change specific things in the house as long as they haven't ordered it. So that's where you can perhaps write in some things that you would want specifically in the house. Now, usually they're gonna make you go to their own provider or they go to this specific place to get light fixtures. They go to this place to get, faucets and things like that. So often you'll have to go choose from what the builder has at their warehouse that they already have, like something that their designer has either used before or easy for them to get at kind of that pricing that builders get, right? So you're not gonna be able to choose anything that you want, don't worry. You won't be able to choose from like a plethora of all these websites or stores. You usually can only choose from one if your builder is letting you choose anything at all. Let's talk about a realtor. So should you use a realtor to buy a spec home? Now, obviously I'm a realtor, and so like, yes, my answer is yes, absolutely. You should be using a realtor to buy a spec home. So a builder is usually either gonna have their own realtor or they're gonna have their own sales team. So if they have their own realtor, that person is licensed. Should you use them? Most likely no. You still need to have someone in your corner, someone that's working specifically for you and not for the builder, right? So your realtor can explain to you different aspects of a contract. Every contract for every builder is typically different. In Oklahoma, we do have a standard new build contract, but I know very few builders that will actually use this contract. They usually have their own attorneys write up their own contracts. Be sure that you let a builder know, or especially a realtor. You really need to call your realtor if you're even thinking about purchasing a spec home or a home from a builder. And the reason for that is they need to be involved from the very beginning. Especially if they've helped you so far in your process, you really need to get that realtor involved so that they understand the process with the builder. They may know the builder very well. I know many of the builders that I work with in my area, and it's easy for me to get information about the different homes that they're building. And that way you don't have to do it. We can do that for you. So keep that in mind. Your realtor is going to be an asset for you as you're trying to understand contracts and then keeping on timelines and understanding what you can ask for from the builder, what you can't, explaining builder's warranties for you, and everything else. Now, this is the argument that I hear from people who don't want to use a realtor if they're buying a spec home from a builder. Well, they'll give me a discount if I don't use a realtor. And some builders will even come right out and say it to you if they're offering that. However, in an aggressive seller's market, we see that if you don't use a realtor, they're just gonna take that money that they were going to use to pay your buyer's agent, and they're gonna take it as profit. So the builder's most likely gonna pay for you to have a realtor. So you may as well take advantage of that. Okay, all this being said, one of the main reasons that people intend to buy a spec house instead of building custom is that they need the house available to them right away. In our current market, your spec house may not be available for 6 or 7 months. That's just because of supply chain issues. People are putting up a lot of houses right now. So just be warned that you may not be able to get a spec house that's available in the next month or so. And of course, people buy spec homes because they don't want to design their house. They don't want to be involved in the custom building process. It is not fun for them, and I get that. I did a semi-custom myself with a large builder here in Norman, Oklahoma, and it was tough even to just do the little things, which I did. I didn't like pick out, the design of the house or the layout of the house. I just picked from their plans. I will not blame you at all for wanting to buy a spec house that a designer has already designed versus picking out all of the stuff yourself. Like, that makes total sense to me. Don't worry. If you're thinking about purchasing a new house or maybe even wanting to build, you might want to watch this video or maybe this video if you're looking for land.